Welcome back to the Strategic Veteran. I'm your host, Adam Peters. And if you've ever wondered what happens when a self proclaimed amateur instigator with a knack for storytelling swaps the comfort of an air conditioned military office for the wild ride of civilian life, then today's episode is for you. Andy Dittrich, our guest, brings a refreshingly honest and often hilarious take on the veteran experience. Born an immigrant, Andy didn't follow the typical military script. He spent his service at a schools battalion, never deployed, and fully embraced the SoCal lifestyle with both in uniform and under the neon lights on the weekends. While some might call it cushy, Andy's journey reminds us that every service story has its own trials, transitions, and unpredictable lessons. But Andy's real adventure began after he turned his government ID in. Suddenly, the structure that shaped his days was gone, and instead of verbally encouraging coworkers, he had to find new ways to motivate and amuse himself. In his book, Play Stupid Games, Win Stupid Prizes, Andy relives some of the questionable choices and sharp lessons that have shaped his outlook on happiness and fulfillment. Through wit and a healthy dose of sarcasm, he's built not just a collection of stories, but a philosophy. Happiness is an inside job, and no one's going to hand you a blueprint for it. Today, we'll dig into Andy's path from immigrant to veteran, the ups and downs of redefining purpose, and how he manages to keep humor in the mix, no matter how questionable the decisions. Andy, brother, welcome to the show, man.
Okay, first of all, I need you to send me that intro because that was pretty dynamite. I need to use that. There was some good nuggets from that one. I like that.
For sure, dude. I'll send it to you as soon as we're done with this, man.
I like that. I was like, happiness is with blueprint with happiness. I'm like, that's a gem right there. I love it.
So, dude, first question for every veteran that comes on, man, is where did you grow up and what inspired you to join?
Yeah, so I was born in Berlin. I'm a German by birth. My whole family is German. Then at 14, my mother and I immigrated to the States. I say the States, it was Alaska. So like the ugly redheaded stepchild of the States, right? But a rich, ugly redheaded stepchild. So that's why the lower 48s keep it around. And I was like, you have money, so you're cool, right?
Anyway, they have so much money that they give their birthright state citizens money.
Anyone who lives there. So I got the permanent fund dividend for a couple of years there. So as long as you're a resident, you can apply for it. There are some legal stipulations, but as long as you live there as a resident, you can apply for it. And I got it several years while I was there.
Nice.
We can talk about that too, the details on how that works and everything, because it's kind of fascinating to someone who's never experienced that.
For sure.
So I did my adolescent years up there in Fairbanks, Alaska. I experienced negative 40-degree cold on a couple occasions. That's no fun. There's some stories to go along with that as well. And then at 19, I got a phone call from a Sergeant so-and-so, United States Marine Corps, rah, 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 rah. I just doing all the usual thing that they do. And I told him, dude, I'm not interested. Don't call me again. Click. 6 months later, calls me again. He got promoted. Now he's staff sergeant, blah, 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 right? And he read up the exact same script, asked me the exact same questions. And I thought, look, man, if I go down there in person, tell him no to his face, maybe he'll take me off of whatever calling list he had me on. So I go down there. He buys me a cup of coffee. We start talking. And he did a good job. He laid it all out, and I kind of look at it with a critical eye, and I realized that, hey, maybe I've been meaning to do something with my life. I've been meaning to get maybe out of town and experience life, because Fairbanks, Alaska is a great place if you want to be there. But if you're a kid, a late teenager, pushing early 20s, opportunities aren't exactly what you would expect them to be, up there.
Yeah.
Unless you're into that, right? There's opportunities for people, but I just didn't find what I was looking for.
I relate to that because I had orders that got deleted between my second and third deployment to go to Fort Wainwright, and I was like not looking forward to that at all.
We could have crossed paths, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't like the cold, man. So like, it would have just sucked for however long I would have been up there. So I relate to what you're saying.
The cold is miserable. I can tell you stories about what happened at negative 40, right? So yeah, I joined up, enlisted at 19, and I was shipped off. This was in 2000. I maybe had a month, right? I signed the papers and I was shipped off a month later. I told my mom, she was like, "Great, do something with your life," right? I'm not in those terms, but she was kind of pushing me to do something, right? And that was that something that she was kind of glad I pulled the trigger on. So 2000 got shipped out, did basic training, all the usual shebang that comes with enlisted fun. And then I was stationed in Southern California in Camp Pendleton, and I was there till I got out in 2004. And then to wrap that portion of my life up. At that time, I didn't have a place to live. Once I got out, I didn't have a place to live, didn't have a job lined up, like most people don't, right? When you're
We'll get there, man. We'll get there.
okay, okay,
I'm curious. So what was your job in the Marine Corps, and
yeah.
did you pick
So,
it, or did the Marine Corps pick it for you? Because that's what stopped
so,
me from joining the Marines, is they couldn't guarantee that I was going to get
oh,
the job that I wanted. And I joined in 2002, so not too
okay.
long after you had joined.
Yeah, for sure. So I did extremely well on the ASVAB, and the recruiter told me you can do whatever you want. Literally, all the jobs that you want to do are open to you. I'm like, cool. I like to do this, that, and the other. He goes, all right. And then I told him, oh, by the way, I'm not a citizen. He's like, ooh, that scene from Family Guy when they're like,
Yeah.
we guys had that talk now, aren't we? So that list of 100 different MOSs that I could have done shrunk down to about 6. So like bulk fueler, supply chain clerk or whatever, supply warehouse clerk, and then administrative. I'm like, come on, man, these all suck. So then I thought about it. And I go, okay, which one of these jobs could I translate over to the real world when I get out, right? What are the things that I can actually use professionally speaking, and then build a skill set. So I picked the most boring of them all was administrative clerk. I will say, however, that even though I went through the MOS school for that, and then I did that job for about 6 months, I ended up talking to the guys in the computer shop. We called it the S6. I'm not sure if that's a standard across the board.
Yeah.
And we,
Shop, that's what we
yeah,
call it.
that's right.
Yeah.
I talked to the staff sergeant that was down in the S6 shop, and I showed to him that I had skills with computers, and he goes, shit, well, our battalion did not rate anyone to work in the S6 shop, so they pulled them from wherever they could. If you had computer skills, chances are you get pulled down there, because guys or girls with computer skills don't come along very often, right? So
Well,
when he realized that,
back then, right?
yeah, back then, early 2000s, I mean,
I
right.
didn't have a computer in my house in Indiana, so mind you, the middle of the country, but until I was a junior in high school. So
fair point. Yeah,
2001.
For sure, yeah. Internet dial-up was a thing, right?
Yeah, AOL
yeah.
chat.
That's right. GeoCities, Angel Fire, Tripod, all those cheesy those Flash games that came out back in the day. The good cheesy stuff, right?
What was it, LimeWire and Kazaa?
Oh my, yes,
and Napster.
Yes.
Yeah,
We're gonna go off tangents a lot in this talk. I'm gonna love it. I love these kind of talks. But there was one that I loved using that no one else ever heard of. It's called SoulSeek. And the great thing about this application called SoulSeek is that, unlike LimeWire and Kazaa and some of the other ones, when you punched in what songs you wanted, it would sit there, and as long as you kept the program open, it would sit there and try to find those songs for you. It would try to find those seeders, and you can just let that thing run for days, weeks at a time, and it'll find the songs eventually, because it was intelligent enough to go out there and scour, the users, while the program was open. I'm like, this is great technology. And now, of course, it went down because of reasons, but it was one of the best ones out there that no one ever heard of. But anyway.
I remember those days so much, man. It'd take you to download one song 8 hours on dial-up.
Yes. Sometimes, man.
And then I had a little side hustle in high school, because my dad actually saved a bunch of money and got 2 CD drives so we could burn CDs, so I could copy CDs. Nice, and so I was making extra money, making playlists. And dude, this is a walk down memory lane. And
CDs were expensive, man. You couldn't just buy a stack for $20. You had to buy them individually, cased for $2 a piece. They're expensive.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I remember that. Now, you said you immigrated to the United States at 14 from Germany, and it's kind of weird to me that you would come, because Germany's kind of the it country in Europe, right?
We do. We do okay.
We do okay. Yeah, right. So, what was the reason for coming, particularly to Alaska? Was it related to your parents' work, or what was it?
Yeah. So we can talk about my mom. Once we get into the talk here. So my parents divorced when I was very, very young. And I guess the story goes that I decided to stay with my mom. My brother decided to stay with my dad. At least that's what we're told. And I think that kind of made sense. I don't know. So my brother and my dad stayed in Berlin, where I was born. And then my mother and I moved to the Black Forest of Germany, which is a beautiful area, kind of butting up against the border of France.
München?
Close, actually, not too far from it. So I was in a small village called Unterreichenbach, population of maybe 2,000 or whatever. I took the train to go to the high school, which was the nearest town over, right? So I mean, very, very small country. I wouldn't say country living, but forest-ish, magical forest kind of living. Doesn't really paint the picture either. But anyway, Black Forest in Germany. And my mother always had a spiritual connection to Alaska. She believes, or at least she told me that she believes that in a former life that she was a Inuit Indian, a native Indian in what is now Fairbanks, right? So imagine hundreds or whatever, how many years ago, she believed that she lived a life, which is, in the area that is now known as Fairbanks. And she always had a spiritual draw towards that place. And who was I to,
Right,
question or
right.
argue that, right? I'm like, and I trust my mom with everything. She's been my parent. She's been both of my parents my entire life. So she's done. I would trust her. Like I said, I trust her with anything. So when we were, I must have been about 13, and she's visited Fairbanks, or Alaska rather, a couple of times leading up to that. And she goes, one day I want to move our stuff, pack our stuff and move to Alaska. And I told her, Mom, wherever you go, I go. So sure enough, one day she came back from one of her trips and she goes, all right, it's time to go. I'm like, all right, let's pack our stuff and go. And off we went.
So I think this is really interesting because really the heart of this show is about, making it through the transition from military life to civilian life. But what I've discovered over countless episodes of this show at this point is it doesn't just apply to us as service members. It applies to people as civilians too. I would say that's a pretty major life transition. Now, I've been fascinated with Germany my whole life. I grew up in southern Indiana in a German Catholic town. We have
Ooh,
Darmstadt, Indiana is tied sister cities to Darmstadt, Germany. So I've
okay.
always been fascinated. Part of the reason I joined the Army is because I knew I could get stationed in Germany. Now,
Mm,
that never happened. I wish it would have. The only time I ever got to go to Germany was through Ramstein when I was medevaced, and I got to go see a couple of the castles because I was
yeah,
walking wounded or whatever, but it was not nearly enough time.
yeah.
And Munich is on my bucket list. I speak a little bit of German. I've always been able to read it and write it better than I can
Nice.
speak it.
Very
So,
cool.
it's. I think it's kind of like what your mom is saying, feeling tied to Fairbanks. I feel very tied to
Yeah,
Germany, in and of itself. Just always
that's
been
awesome.
fascinated with it. So, what was that transition like as a 14-year-old kid? I mean, I know you guys learn English over there in school, so
That's
that's
right.
you already speak the language. What did you experience when you were particularly going to a state like Alaska?
Yeah.
It's
So
different.
definitely was culture shock, not just in the people, but obviously the language. To your point, yes, we were taught British English, the proper British English, from fifth grade on out. I don't think you can even dodge that in Germany. You have to learn English once you hit that age. So I had a couple years of taught English experience, but being taught English in school is much different from having conversational English with a bunch of teenagers and in peer level, right? So a lot of sayings, a lot of
Slang. Yeah, the
a lot of
slang.
slang, and there were just a couple of things that just made no sense. For example, the phrase "knock on wood." Why would you knock on wood for things, right? The other phrase that got me for the longest time, and then some. And then some what? You're missing a verb, you're missing a noun here. Like you're missing a part of the sentence. And then some what happens afterwards, right?
That's it. That's the end
Uh,
of the sentence.
right. So there are little things like that, and I learned the language pretty quickly. I tried to fit in as much as I could. I didn't want to be known as the new kid, the German kid, in school. So I did my best to lose my accent, to just kind of blend in with the rest of the kids. Now looking back, maybe I shouldn't have tried so hard to assimilate, maybe kept some more of the accent, but it comes out, I guess, when I drink. So there's a bonus right there. There was another cute story of when I was working at a coffee shop, and the owner called up and she was asking if we were out of anything, if she needed to order anything. Now keep in mind this coffee shop made sandwiches and ice cream and all other stuff, two pretzels, and I told her yes, we're out of jalapenos. And there was a pause on the phone. She goes, "What?" And I go, "Jalapenos. We're out of jalapenos." She goes, "Andy, what are you talking about?" And I go,
Yeah.
those little spicy green things that we cut up and we put into you. Oh, jalapenos. I'm like, wait, why would you pronounce a J sound like an H sound? It didn't occur to me that that wasn't an English word. It's a Spanish word, right?
Right.
But when I read jalapenos, it should be pronounced jalapenos because that's how it's spelled, right?
Yeah. Something I'm curious. This is just me being purely
Yeah.
curious. Were you kind of just taken aback by how big this country actually is compared to Germany? And I see this a lot on social media
Hmm.
now when particularly it's the Brits who come over here and they don't recognize like you just get in the car and you can drive for 100 miles to go to
Yeah.
work. And they're like, if I drive 100 miles, I'll be at the coast. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like, it's unheard of. Did that like astonish you?
So I never got that sense of space. I will say, however, what you said is exactly what my dad said when he came to visit a couple of many years ago, and he did a trip from Vegas to the Grand Canyon, then down to California, did the five all the way up from like San Diego as far as he could to like San Francisco. He did the whole like touristy, spots. And when he came back, that's the first thing he said. He goes, I completely underestimated the distances because to your point, right, in Germany, all of Europe, but when you drive for an hour, you pretty much cut across the entire country, more or less, give or take. He's like, here you can drive for days and you won't get anywhere.
Yeah,
And
I
he
mean,
goes,
like
he was just amazed by the distances.
yeah, like a prime example. I live in Florida, and next month I have to get to Miami to the airport, so I'm taking a train, right? And a 3-hour train ride from where I'm at in Central Florida to South
Mhm.
Florida in Miami. A 3-hour train ride puts you in France,
That's
or
right.
you know what I mean?
That's
Like
right. That's right.
it's wild. So
Yeah.
that's awesome, man. Let's move back to your military career. I've
Yeah.
entertained my own curiosity enough. I think it's just fascinating that we get to meet people from all different walks of life. That's what the military does for us, right? Like, we share that in common. I'm curious, you weren't a U.S. citizen when you joined the United States military, and I'm always curious, like, what is the inspiration other than for doing that, to better your life or do something with your life? Like, were there reservations? Did you feel, because I know me personally, I couldn't go join another country's army
Yeah.
or military. Like, we're not raised that
Yeah.
way here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm very curious, like, what was that for you? Like, how did that?
Yeah. It's a really interesting question, right? So I never had any reservations. I know that Germans as a whole, even my generation, maybe not the generation as much that comes after me, but I know that definitely my generation and the ones that are older than me, right, just physically older, right, there is still a sense of guilt and debt from what Germany has done to, I wouldn't say the rest of the world, but to a good chunk of Europe, not too long ago. So I don't know, the term or the idea of joining the military in Germany or just being German and joining the military has this warm, cold, sweet, sour. Well, we do it because we have to, because we have civil service, but no one really is, at least in my opinion, I can't speak for everybody else, but then being attached to the military it's got a bit of a griminess to it. I don't know how to explain it. Germans still have a bit of a, at least my
It's
generation,
still
like I
like
said,
an open wound, right? Like,
yeah, it's something that we're like, ooh, yeah, let's not, right? It's a little,
right, right. Well,
anyways.
I think it's interesting too, because from where I sit, not a lot of Germans want to talk about that period of
Mm,
history, because it is still an open wound. It's a sore spot, and again, there's that dichotomy. You're joining the United States military. We were enemies,
yeah,
not 60 years before you
yeah,
joined.
not too long
Like,
ago, right?
that's wild,
Someone
right?
asked me. Someone asked me a question. It was like, while I was still like, I think like in basic training, they realized I was German. They're like, so what would you do if the U.S. were to go to war with Germany? Like, what side would you fight on? I go, I don't want to make that decision, dude. That's not. Come on,
Right.
man. Like, how am I supposed to answer that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, that's definitely interesting, man. So you did stuff with computers. Did you get any language pay? I know German's
No,
not
so
like
I
a
took
sought after.
I took the exam. I took the test, passed it, but we weren't at odds with Germany at the time, so I didn't get paid for that. No, but a couple of my guys in the battalion did. One of them spoke one of the Asian languages like Vietnamese or something, and it
Yeah,
was on the list of things, and she got paid like $100 a month or whatever.
yeah, because I know in the army it didn't matter if you tested for a language, you could get paid for it.
Oh no, ours was you can test and you can pass. First of all, you have to pass the test, but then your language that you speak has to be on a certain list, and only then do you get that pay on top of it.
Awesome, man. I don't even know where to go from here, man.
I
Let's
will
just
real
so
quick. I want to finish the because you brought up
yeah.
something interesting about being a German citizen that joined another country's military. So my mom told me that if I ever wanted to move back to Germany, if I ever wanted to, she says you may want to talk to someone up in the governmental arm of the blah blah blah, right? And you may just want to clear with whomever your actions because it could look like from the Germans from a German government point of view, it could look like that you deserted your country to join another country's military. I'm like, That's a really valid point. I know that never came up, and I'm sure I can, explain my actions if I ever were to move back there and want to, reacquire my citizenship and everything else, my residency. It never came up. I don't think it ever will. But she brought up a good point. This could look very, very dicey in the wrong, from the wrong point of view.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely, I hadn't even thought about it like that. Particularly,
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's easy to explain away. Like, I was a 13-year-old kid when we moved over there, so
Right.
my formative teenage years, kind of influenced the decision. Like, this is where I
Sure.
live. This is what I want to do. This is a path to do something with my life. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? No,
And
no,
I'll be
it's
like,
really.
have you seen the Marine Corps dress blues? My God, if you want to get laid, just wear some of those, right?
That's it, dude. That's so. Every single Marine that comes on here, it's always something about the uniform. Usually, the uniform. Remember, John Daly came on, founder
Mhm.
of Detachment One, and big, influence in MARSOC,
Yeah,
and that was it. He remembers being a young kid, seeing the Marines in their dress blues at a parade, and that was
that's
it.
awesome.
From then
He
on,
was
he
like,
wanted to be
"Yup,
a Marine. Yeah,
yep."
yeah,
And I will
and
say, and to go completely a little inappropriate, I'm sure we'll get more inappropriate as the talk goes on. This may be a sore spot too, but I'm just saying, back in the day, those German uniforms were pretty freaking on point. Okay, I'm
I
not
mean,
I'm not saying it was good or bad. I'm just saying the uniforms just by themselves, right? If you
yeah.
take the cutout of those, you're like pretty
Okay.
snazzy. They look
Yeah.
pretty damn sexy.
Well, and
Okay,
there's a reason people collect them to this day, right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah, for
and
better or
it's
for worse,
not
right?
just from a history perspective because they do
Yeah.
look good, man. Uh, in the
If you're gonna
Marines, you
invade in style, right?
yeah, yeah. So you're messing with computers in the Marines at a time when computers are really starting to make their way into society and really kind of change how we
Yeah.
function in society. What was it like for you? I mean, were you enjoying it? Did you have fun? I know we talked in the green room before about some of the you didn't deploy. You saw the effects of those deployments on your fellow Marines
Yeah.
and people and whatnot, and kind of maybe had some regret or whatever, kind of wishing that you had been in a position to do that. But did you overall enjoy your career?
Yeah. I always say that I never regretted joining up, but I was glad I got out when I did. That really sums it up, right? I mean, I really, like you and I spoke earlier, I had probably the cushiest job anyone could ask for, especially in the Marine Corps. I was working in an air conditioned office. We went down to PB and San Diego Gas Slam to go party on the weekends. I DD'd many, many times because I just didn't want to drink, and my buddies were like, "Dude, we need a driver. Come with us." I'm like, "Cool, better than sitting in the barracks, right?" I really had a good time. It may have been a little boring, right? Overall, maybe a little uneventful. The coolest thing I ever did was we threw a live grenade during training, and I will say, I got lucky, and I was able to do spy rigging. Spy rigging is where they attach that harness to you, and you get hooked onto the bottom of a helicopter's a rope attached to a helicopter, and then you get dangled from the rope as the helicopter flies you around for a couple minutes. I was lucky to pull some strings to be able to do that. That was probably the coolest thing I've done. But other than that, I didn't go overseas. We didn't deploy. I was with a schools unit. We just trained young Marines harder when the war happened. So I don't know. It was a bittersweet experience. Again, I enjoyed having made the decision to enlist. But after 4 years, I'm like, I'm done. I want to get out and do civilian things.
Yeah, man. So you said you're glad you got out when you did. What was the decision? Like, what made you decide, like, it's time for me to hang it up? I'm ready to get
Yeah,
out.
I think everyone's first couple years is probably the same, right? You get yelled at a lot. You get yelled at a lot. You get to clean a lot. You get to just kind of conform a lot and do the first couple years of low rank enlisted, right? Non NCO, and then once
Truly become indoctrinated. Yeah, that's
right,
exactly what it
exactly right.
is.
And it wasn't. I mean, it was what it was, right? Everyone goes through it, and I didn't have a particularly bad couple of years. I had a good group of people that I hung out with, and work wasn't all that taxing either. I don't know, just ready to move on. I was just tired of the same old, get up, go to work, do this, fix computers, go PT, and then then the weekends go down into, I don't know. I tried fitting in with civilians so much so that I always wore like a low reg haircut, and I didn't shave on a Friday so I can have a little bit of stubble on a Saturday when we went out. I just wanted to be civilian, not look like that typical military dude who we flooded, Southern California, so you can spot a military guy from a mile away. And
Yeah.
I just wanted to just experience life outside of that. And then in 2004, when my contract was about to be up, I was dating someone. She introduced me to Las Vegas, and there was a opportunity for me to move up here. And I was like,
That
all
was
right,
it.
that's all I need. And then they asked, my staff NCOs, they're like, hey, we'd like to keep you. Do you want to re-enlist? Do you want to extend? I'm like, thanks, but
I'm
no
out.
thanks. I'm
See
out.
ya.
Thank you. Yeah, I did. I did. It all it all worked out really well. I kind of look back and I think to myself, what would have happened had I stayed in? I could have retired by now, but my life trajectory would have gone completely differently from where I am today. And I'm happy. I'm glad where I ended up and then how I kind of came into my own, where I am today. And I don't think that I would have lived that life anywhere close to what I have today had I stayed in.
I love that, man. It's the hindsight's always 2020, right?
Always, right?
Always 2020.
I
And
want. I wish. Oh, sorry, I didn't want to cut
no,
you off.
no, you're good. You're good. Go
I
ahead.
wonder. I wonder if you die, who knows? I don't think anybody truly knows what happens when you die, whether you're religious or not. Deep down, nobody knows what the hell is going to happen, right? Maybe there's like a small sliver of me that goes, when you die, you get to see your life's trajectory, and you get hey, do you want to do it over here, right? You just jump back into your life here. You forget that you've died. You live that trajectory, right? You live a completely different life without knowing that you're now doing a take two. And you're just going to live your life as the person who completed your military service for 20 years and just live that life in a different
Oh,
phase,
this is awesome. I'm going to actually entertain this because why not? So several times throughout my life, and this actually makes a lot of sense what you're saying. Several times throughout my life, I catch myself subconsciously or whatever, just kind of in my own head saying, remember that for next time, but it'll be some giant life event that is not going to happen again. Like, you don't get a second chance at that. And it's like, why would I
Interesting.
subconsciously tell myself to remember that for next time? So just to entertain that for a little bit, I know that might be weird for people that are listening, but fuck you, I don't care.
That's right. It's your show. You say whatever you want. That's right.
Yeah, I think because you brought it up, I think that's very interesting. Plus, I've got some plant medicine experience behind me now, and so that really opens your mind to a lot of other possibilities and shit like that. Because I don't know, man. I think there's some validity to what you just said. I think that could. I mean, you could go down some rabbit holes on YouTube. You can find out there are a ton of people who believe that your soul kind of picks the journey that comes here, and you come here to learn specific lessons. And if you don't learn those lessons, then you start over from kind of what you were saying, a certain point, until you learn those lessons again as your soul or whatever. I don't know. Interesting to just embellish for a minute.
Yeah, noodle on some esoteric topics, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Nice. So you mentioned, man, getting out, you had no plan, no job, no place to live. You were dating a girl who invited you to Vegas. Let's pick it up from there.
Sure.
What were you thinking? What were you feeling? What were you going through? Because through this show, through my own experience, lived experience, I've identified pretty much three key things that are really driving the unsuccessful transition out of the military. It's the loss of identity, the loss of purpose, and then some form of loss of community / network, or just not having a network. So it sounds to me like, I don't know, you tell me kind of from your perspective about those three things. Like what was going on with you when you got out? Did you notice any of those things?
I think everyone has that momentary, man, maybe if I go back into it, I get my structure, I know what to do, I know when to wake up, I know where to be. I think that transition takes a minute, especially when you're young and you don't have a place lined up and you're like, all right, I was living out of my boxes, not out of my car, but I was living out of my packed stuff, my boxes for a couple of weeks. I was sleeping on someone's couch. I was pretty aimless too, and I was trying to find a job. But how do you find a job when your clothes are boxed up in the bins next to you, right? So it was an odd time for me as well. It's interesting. Those are really good points, right? The loss of community, the loss of what'd you say? Was identity one of them?
Identity, purpose, and community / network. Yeah.
Yeah. I think coming to Vegas was a culture shock too, right? Coming out of the military and then being dumped into is not the right term, falling into what Vegas was in the early 2000s. That was a culture shock too, right? Things move at a different pace here, right?
Vegas is
differently.
Weird. It's unlike any other place
Yeah.
I've truly ever. It's one of my favorite places to go to. I love going to
To
Vegas.
visit, right? People are visiting
Yeah.
it,
Oh
but
yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like dessert. Everyone likes a bite of dessert, but would you want to eat dessert for the rest of your life? Maybe not, right?
Right. Right.
It was interesting, and I definitely grew a lot as a young adult. I was definitely quite green and not understanding how life worked, and kind of like happy go lucky, very trusting, and to a fault of other people, and having then coming to Vegas and experiencing actual life outside the military. And I feel like the military also, when you're younger, kind of shields you from life quite a bit, right? Of course, you have
Yes.
to deal with you have to deal with your fellow, with your peers and your staff and everything else, but it shields you from real life. Like you don't see the kind of shit you see here on the streets. You just don't see that on base, right? And people coming up to you and asking you, trying to bum money off of you. You just don't have that on base, right? So it does shield you from certain aspects of life. So there's a lot of lessons that I had to learn the hard way. I put money into what was obviously a scam, thinking I was going to become rich quick, and then I lost a chunk of money when I didn't have that money to waste. Like just life things happen, right? Um, but I definitely got into the party scene, right? But I only drank back in the day, which was actually kind of good. I got into other extracurricular things later in life when it was a good time to get into them. That sounds really awful, but how about this? I experienced the things that life has to offer when I was a little bit wiser, older, and knew what I was doing with them, right? I didn't
There
just
you
fall into
go.
them because it was, oh yes, I want to do it because I want to get high. No, I didn't because it made sense and I enjoyed doing it and I knew when to say stop, right? So I got into that portion of what life has to offer much later in life, and that helped me a lot, I think. I've gone to 15 years worth of raves. I've done my fair share of extracurricular chemical activities, and I had a good time with them. But they never took a hold of my life. I was never addicted to anything. I could say, cool, it's it's like the phrase of it should enhance the time, not replace the time.
Well, and I love that you're making this point because, as someone who is now leading people to plant medicine to heal, it's so much about intention. And that's exactly what you're talking about. You're talking about intention. Your intention was to enhance the time that you were
Yeah,
having, not to escape
yeah,
the thoughts and
correct.
feelings you were experiencing. And I think to your point, all you were doing was drinking alcohol. I'll never drink again.
It's the worst drug in the world. If alcohol were invented today, they would put it on Schedule One overnight.
Yes, 100%, and I agree with. It's literally poison to your body. It just has so many negative effects, and this is coming from somebody who, at his peak, was drinking 2 gallons of whiskey in my house before going to the bar every single night. Right, like a week. So I've spent tons of money.
Sure.
I was never into the drugs. In fact, until I went to Peru 2 years ago, my only experience with drugs was cannabis, and I love cannabis. I still use cannabis to this day, very intentionally. However, that's the standard for myself is the intention that you set with it or whatever. But I just think it's important that people actually listen to what you just said about being older and wiser and the intention that you had set with experiencing those things that life has to offer. And I was blessed to have a good civilian friend when I got out of the Army. Cocaine is one of those drugs that I've always wanted to try. And he's like, dude, you do not need to try this drug. It is going to be the end of you. He's like, your personality and cocaine
Mm,
they're not going to fucking mix. And
okay.
you're going to just spiral out of
Yeah.
control. And so I'm so glad I never did that. And I carry that with me to this day because there's still a big part of me that wants to try cocaine, but I know just latching onto what he
Yeah.
said, like it's probably not a good idea that I ever try it. And I don't know what I'm missing, so I don't really feel the need to go experiment with that. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, funny you say that. I have the same about. There's certain drugs I'll never touch, right? Like methamphetamine, right? I'll
yeah,
never
never.
purposefully go out and seek it out and do it. Heroin, right? Or hardcore opiates and everything. I was told a story secondhand by someone who went to Thailand, and he did heroin there because it was whatever was available, and he did it. And the story goes that he laid down and he just had 1,000 angels touching and caressing him the entire time he was on that trip. I don't know if the trip is the right term, but on that experience. And he's never done it since, and he thinks about it every day. And I'm like, you know what? those are things that, sure, they kind of, I entertain the thought, but I don't think I'll ever want to pull the trigger on that. This sounds like way too much of a rabbit hole that you can really fall down into.
Well, and that's the problem, particularly with heroin, is that first time
Yeah.
is the best time, and then you chase it. They call it chasing the dragon, right?
Mm.
You're always chasing that, and you never get it. It's
You'll never
why
get it. Yeah.
it's why it's so addictive and so, it's. I mean, we see what's going on with heroin and fentanyl now.
Fentanyl. Yeah. It's the worst.
It's
Yeah. It's
it's
terrible.
out of control. So you get to Vegas, like, what are you doing? You're finding a job.
Yeah.
What do you end up doing with your life? You
Yeah.
said you fell into the party scene, which is not hard to do in Vegas. In fact, every time I go to Vegas, I'm not a club guy. I've never been a club guy. My favorite thing is to walk up and down the strip by day, I'd sit at Caesar's Palace gazebo and people watch, cross
That's
the
right.
bridge, use the bathroom, grab a couple tall boy beers, come back
That's
to the
right.
gazebo, and then at night go to Fremont Street where the drinks are
All
actually
the
cheaper,
silliness. Yep.
listen to live music, watch the incredible street art, maybe play on the zip line a little bit since I'm not fat anymore. Like, I think Vegas it really is a city that offers something for
So much.
everybody.
It really has a lot.
Everybody. The Mob Museum, I never even knew it existed. It was one of the coolest experiences I've ever had, was going to the Mob Museum, learning that basically the mob is responsible for all of what Vegas has become,
Yeah.
which is fascinating in its own right. And so, just to prove a point, like, Vegas has a lot more to offer than just partying.
Yeah.
And as somebody who lives there, I think, you can speak to getting out of the Marine Corps and building your life there now.
Yeah, it was quite a culture shock, like I said. And to your point, also, Vegas has gotten a lot more progressive in the way that you can go to most bars and ask for a mocktail menu, right? So Vegas is also very conscious about, hey, people don't want to drink as much. Cannabis is legal, right? So there's definitely a shift in entertainment when it comes to what do you do at night. Well, you don't have to go out and go to the clubs and get drunk. You can go to you can go down to the arts district. We have First Friday, right? We can go. You can smoke cannabis. You can do all kinds of things that don't involve the usual, check boxes from go to Vegas, get drunk, go to a club, get laid, check, right? You don't have to do that anymore, right? Or rather, there were more options than that. Not that there's anything wrong with it, right? If you wanted to. I once had a vendor come in town, and they were here for like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then on a Wednesday night, we all went out for a couple drinks. And it was like their first time in Vegas. They're from somewhere in the Midwest, and they're like, "All right, well, what else is there to do here?" And I go, how much money do you want to spend? You can literally do anything in this town. You can buy a Harley if you wanted to, if you have the money. You can go skydiving, right? You can do anything that you can eat the best food that the world has to offer here. How much money do you want to spend? It is all literally almost everything is available for you here. So coming to town, I got into the club scene here. There was a club that was open here called Ice that played before EDM was EDM. It played house and techno and all those good other genres right before EDM kind of blew up and do its own little thing. And all the big DJs came here before these DJs were even known on a global scale. But I knew them because I was always into that music. So I used to go there, used to drink, right? Have a couple drinks on the way there, have a couple drinks while I was there, go home, sleep it off. And I was in my mid-20s. You can just sleep it off and wake up the next day and rinse and repeat.
You can't do that in your 40s.
Dude, don't get me started. I look at a beer and I already got hungover, that kind of thing. And I was lucky enough to land a job, entry level service desk IT work, with a company that is no longer in business. But at the time, it did work well for me. I was working an hourly wage. It was decent for what I need to do, for the money that I needed. I was living by myself. I was living in to kind of paint the picture. I was living in a quad studio where you have your own bedroom and your own bathroom, but you share the living room and the kitchen with potentially 3 other people. I paid $375 a month, and I mean you can't even get a shack for that much money these days. But at the time, that's all I needed. I was just a single dude. I was trying to figure out my life and my path, and it worked. Looking back, of course, I would probably not make that decision again. But at the time, it worked perfectly fine. I was still so. I don't know if the word conditioned is the right term, but in the military, when you live in the barracks, I mean, we rarely locked our doors because everything is no one's going to barge into the room unless there is a P test in the morning, and they have the master key anyway. So locking the door doesn't really do anything for you. Plus, you're not going to get burglarized by someone living in the barracks. It just doesn't happen. So I would leave the door to this quad studio, this little apartment. I would leave it unlocked at night, and my friends were like, why would you do that? And I go, what's the risk? And they're like, you want to lock your door, dude. Like, you don't know who's out there. And of course, nothing ever happened. No one ever just comes into your room for no reason. But it was just that kind of mentality of, no, it's fine. Why would I want to lock the door? Right.
Yeah. Wild, man. So things like that, you take that for granted.
Yeah.
I remember too, every Friday, Saturday, Sunday in the barracks, when I lived in the barracks, the doors, we would break the little hinge at the top that automatically closes the door, and
Yep.
just doors wide
Just keep
open.
it
That
open.
means and floor to floor, just partying
Yep.
back and forth between rooms. So
That's
yeah,
right.
I relate to that a ton. So you're working IT. Obviously, you don't want to work an IT, help desk type job for forever. So, what are you thinking about, like the direction your life is going? Or are you even thinking about that? You're just kind of
Yeah.
taking it as it comes.
Yeah, so I've always been interested in working on computers. My very first computer was a Commodore 64 back in the 80s, right? That I diddled on. And I always had an knack for it. And I've been in computers. I've been an IT professional for 30 plus years, and that's my path. And I'm good at what I do, and I enjoy doing it. And then I had a couple lucky breaks at work where a director took a liking towards me. He kind of took me under his wing and gave me some mentorship and gave me some opportunities that I otherwise wouldn't have gotten. And I think that I'm going to shift gears for a second here. I never had a solid father figure in my life. My mom raised me. I had stepfathers, stepdads, and I do have an actual father, like a biological dad who lives in Germany still, but I never had that father figure that kind of guided me and gave me those lessons that you would expect as a young man to have gotten from a father. So my mom did most of my parenting, and she did the best she could with what she had, but I just never got those life lessons. And I've gotten some of that from the mentors that I've been lucky to be around. And and I and I personally now have this need, this desire to give that back to the world, right? So I mentor. There's a mentorship program that I'm part of where I mentor. They're not kids. I call them kids. Late teens, early 20s, young IT professionals. I've always taken a liking towards people that work with me that are service desks that want to move their way up into the higher levels of IT. I've always taken a liking towards getting young men, adolescent men, or young professionals into the next stage. Because again, I feel like whatever you missed when you were growing up, you have maybe a need, a desire, maybe not an obligation, but you have a drive, some sort of draw to give that back to the world because you know how painful it is to not have it. So it's something that you can pay back to do, right? That you're now able to do to give to others.
Yeah. And I think what you're talking about is super important because, I see a lot of folks getting out and they think that they can, translate all of their skills into this new company, whether it's IT or whatever, project management, et cetera, et cetera. And to your point, you've got to find mentors who can teach you how the systems in the new corporation work. And then those high leverage skills that you developed in the military will actually propel you forward up that career ladder. And I think what you just said is you're an example of that. You were working the help desk, somebody took a liking to you and started mentoring you so you could go further in your life. And I think that's the point that TAP gets wrong when we get out.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember going through that
TAP.
20 years ago, but they tell you you're a veteran, everybody's going to want to hire you. Well, that's just not the fucking case. It's priming, and they're setting you up for failure instead of success. And so, my point is you're going to have to take a couple of steps back. You're not going to get that senior leadership position that you think that you're qualified for. However, you're going to shortcut exponentially how fast you actually are able to climb that ladder because of the skills that you do have. Maybe it's 3 months, maybe it's 6 months, maybe it's 12 months, but I guarantee you are way more equipped than your civilian counterparts to climb that ladder really, really quick.
I agree with that. And at work, I've come across many, many other veterans. And almost always when they find out that you're a veteran, they're like, oh shit, yeah, come over here. Let me put you on the fast track. Right. There's always, and I noticed that too at work when a new girl comes in, I find out they're veterans. I'm like, you get 5 points just because you're a veteran. I'm going to make sure you succeed.
Right. Dude, I love that. I want to shift gears and I want to talk about the IT field and why IT. So I have an AI company. We are All Set Technologies. Our aim is to target small to medium-sized veteran-owned businesses and integrate AI and automation into their business because that is the future. And so I just want to spend the rest of the time we have here. Let's talk about your book,
Sure.
because
Oh, we haven't
place
even
to
touched on that. That's right.
yeah, I know.
I
Place
had such a good time just talking to you. I completely forgot about the plug and everything. Perfect.
yeah, yeah, but play stupid games, win stupid prizes. That's a saying I've been using since I joined the military. I'm sure it probably has its
It's very
origins
prevalent.
in
Yes.
the military, and it's becoming a more popular saying these days. But you actually went and wrote a book. What was the inspiration to write the book?
Yeah, I realized I was telling the same 20 stories over and over and over, and then just like a comedian on stage, once you have the same material and you present it over and over and over, you start getting the timing right, you get the punctuation, the inflection, the punchline hits, everyone laughs, or people go, oh, it's interesting, right? There's a certain amount of massaging that you do with these stories that over the time of you telling them over and over and over, you get them into like a perfect, nice little package, right? At least from my point of view. And then I have opinions about a lot of things. So the book is divided. The first half is I call them silly stories, right? Things that embody the title of the book. And then the other half is more introspective, I have some unpopular opinions that I share. I go off on some rants. It's basically me being on a soapbox and me just talking to an audience of no one, right? The discussion we had about afterlife beliefs or what happens maybe when you get a do-over, the whole last page is dedicated to my esoteric afterlife belief, where it kind of goes into the details that we talked about, right? So it's, again, just me being on a soapbox and me sharing my opinions. And as I told these stories over and over and over, I thought some people would say, I've heard people say, you should write a book. I'm like, yeah, everyone kind of nods their head and all right, I should, right? And then I thought, well, maybe I fucking should, right? So I started writing these stories down as I remembered them, and then as I noodled on that for a bit, one of my fears was putting it all down on paper and then and then only having like 50 pages. That's not a book, that's a pamphlet, right? But once I got to the point where I crossed 100 pages, excuse me, then I thought, cool, we have something here. And now it's 160 pages. It's on Amazon, right? You can buy it, it's printed and everything. And I'm like, this is my passion project, my labor of love that came together, and that I really poured a lot into it. And you'll get to know too, like I want to be unapologetically me throughout the entire thing. So it's me and my some of my shortcomings, my bad decision making, my funny moments, my introspective. Oh, and you did good on that one. I like to think I changed some people's lives with my decision making. So it's the good, the bad, and everything in between. As you were saying earlier, doing that intro, laced with sarcasm and cynicism, right? I really think that you get a full 360 of who I am and what I am by reading. By reading it.
Well, dude, and I love that so much, because it's how I've built this brand, is just being unapologetically me. Authenticity is in a world where everything, you pick up your phone, you scroll anything, it's so unauthentic. There's always some kind of and I guess, this is kind of hypocritical, because I do have, kind of a hidden kind of, I want people to follow and to latch onto the content, because I want them to not make the same mistakes that I made. So I guess I do have somewhat of an angle that I'm working, but I'm doing it in my own way. I talk about my fuck ups. I talk about where I get it wrong. I very publicly talk about, I just shut down a community because I'm not a community builder. I figured that out the hard way, right? Like I wasted $1,200 over the last year to collect 200 veterans that didn't do shit with the community. Well, I'm not a community builder, and I figured this shit out. This was my thinking. I figured this shit out. I created this space for you guys to interact with others who have walked a mile in your shoes, and you don't want to leverage it. Why the fuck am I doing this? You know what I mean? And I was public about why I was shutting it down, and then everybody, they read into it what they want to read into it. So I'm sure you probably experienced this with your book, but they're like, oh, so you're going to quit advocating for veterans. I was like, no, I'm just going to just get rid of this thing that is taking away from what I'm actually good at, which is connecting people, having these conversations, whatever, you know what I mean? And so I love that you recognize the need to just write the book. And I think maybe you did, either you did or you didn't, but it actually was probably pretty cathartic for you in a way. And you probably learned a lot about yourself.
Yeah. I think catharsis is a word that I've been using quite a bit over the last 10, 15 years. So it's funny you bring that up. There are definitely some for example, there was a really, really good friend of mine who many years ago committed suicide. And I know we're going to take this discussion to a darker place here for the next 5 minutes, but I lost touch with him. He was a really good buddy of mine back in the day when I was working IT, when I first, got to Vegas. And he really was, he showed me and it taught me a bunch of things that as a more grown adult, I didn't understand or I didn't know. So I took a liking towards the dude because he was older and more experienced, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot from him. Then we lost touch. He still lived in town, but we completely lost touch. This is before the days of social media and Instagram and all that stuff. And he was never an online presence kind of a guy, so he never would have had a Facebook or anything like that. And then a couple of years ago, I thought, whatever happened to the dude? And he had a pretty generic name. I ended up punching it into Google, see if there's any kind of, maybe there's a resume that is floating around, maybe with a phone number. And I found his obituary. And that day sucked. It was like my friend that I've known for many, many years, a couple of years prior to that day, he committed suicide. I'm like, fuck, that sucks. So I talk about him in the book. There were some time, that day was difficult for me when I found that out, and no one else knew of him, right? None of my friends knew who he was. Old coworkers have moved away. So really, I was the only person that still had a connection towards the dude, and the dude is no longer here. So who am I supposed to now share my stories with? Like nobody. There's nobody else here. I can't even tell people about him because nobody would know who the hell he is, right? I mean, there's a disconnect of, hey, I knew a guy, now he's dead, but let me tell you something about him, right? So me writing about him for about a page or so, and I talked about some other friends who are no longer here. That was cathartic, right? Because it allowed me to get his name out there to kind of honor his memory and say, look, people may not know who he is, but I remember you, and I want to make sure that it's on paper. It's more, you're immortalized in my eyes.
Yeah, man. So it allows you to process your own grief and deal with it in your own way and kind of let go of, I'm sure that came with, I could have stayed in touch with this guy and maybe prevented this, or, that survivor's guilt that you deal with. Yeah. So I love that. Let's move to you're an IT guy, you're a computer guy. I am self-taught. I'm teaching myself Python right now.
Perfect. Love it. Hell yeah.
AI is fucking amazing to me. Yep. I'm not one of those people who is the doomsayer. Like, it's fucking here.
It's here to stay. It's not going anywhere.
It's not going anywhere. In fact, the big beautiful bill, there's no regulatory decisions that can be made on it for the next decade. Which, I mean, that may be a bad thing. Now we got Project Stargate, which is, you can turn that into the very beginnings of Skynet if you want to. That's really probably what that's going to end up being. Probably not in our lifetime, so I don't have to worry about it. But I think IT, and I think this isn't just my own philosophy. This is other people I've had on this podcast, from University of Syracuse IVMF reaching out to me, to Vets to Industry is now taking an AI forward approach and a technology IT kind of sector approach. Lots of powerful people are saying IT is the space to be in. Tech, computers, AI. What are your thoughts and feelings on this? Let's just riff on this for the remaining time, because I think it's important. I have a lot of fun. I didn't know that. I was always afraid of coding, mainly because I'm not a math guy. I did terrible in math in school. Even in college, I had an awesome professor who really unlocked math for me because it wasn't being taught to me in a way that I was able to grasp it. So he unlocked that for me, but it prevented me from doing a lot of things, particularly when I got out. Like, instead of pursuing a degree in software engineering or something like that, where I would have learned to code, I was afraid of the advanced math degrees that you have to go through in programs. And now you got tools like Cursor and Windsurf, and even more basic tools like Lovable and Bolt and Replit, where you can go and create web pages. It generates the code for you, and you can go to an LLM when you don't understand something and ask it to explain what this line of code is, what this error is. And I've taught myself HTML and CSS to this.
That's point. Amazing.
I'm now teaching myself Python, and I think in systems. I've always thought in systems, so it's like perfect for me to be in this space, learning how to automate systems and processes in business to make you more efficient, give you more ROI. Does any of that resonate with you? Like, is that similar to what you're doing? Like, and why do you think that this is something veterans should be pursuing when they get out?
Yeah, I think so. I can totally resonate with what you said about being self-taught. I rarely had formal training or formal schooling when it comes to IT. When I was a teenager, I took apart my piece of crap Packard Bell, a million times, put it back together, reinstalled Windows. I can't tell you how many times, because I just found a knack. I found it interesting, and I did it because I enjoyed doing it. So I self-taught a lot of my skill set as well. So I can totally understand the frustration, but also the relief that comes with, hey, it finally worked, right? You get that la feeling, right? When you press the button, it does what it's supposed to, and you're like, finally, all that work paid off, and I figured it out, right? There was that fuck yeah moment that comes with that.
Yeah.
And the angels sing, and the choir of the heavens,
Yeah,
right?
dude. You feel like
Um,
you're on top of the world.
Hell yeah! And then you try to run the next program, and it breaks because you forgot a semicolon somewhere. You're like, "Fuck it!" I didn't understand any of this, right? And you're right
You
back
got
to square one.
25 nodes in N8N, and you're on the last one, and it throws a fucking error, and you're like, "What the?
God damn it!
Everything fucking worked."
Nothing. Yeah, I don't understand any of this,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Stupid computers.
yeah.
Um, I agree with you that AI is definitely the future. It's not going anywhere. I I had a couple of veterans or a couple of coworkers while I was in the military ask me, "Hey, I want to get into computers because there's a lot of money in it." I'm like, sure, there is absolutely money in IT, 100%, but I don't think you should get into it just because there's a career path. I gave the example of, let's assume you go into the medical field and you become the best spinal surgeon in the world, right? But you hate your job, but you're world renowned. You have gotten awards and certifications and blah blah blah, and the titles that come with it, and the fame, I guess, that comes with being a world-renowned spinal surgeon. But if you don't like your job, you're going to hate getting up every morning. Same about IT. Sure, there's tons of money to be made there. But unless you really enjoy it, I would not recommend you get into it just because there's money in it. That's not a
Use
good
me as
career
an
path.
example of this, man. I went and wasted 2 years of GI Bill on flight school because there's a lot of money in it. Now, mind
Sure.
you, flying was my dream. I tried to join the Air Force and the Navy first, but I wear glasses and they told me to fuck off, right? Like, never was going to be my thing. Even put in a warrant packet twice while I was in the Army because I thought
Yeah.
I could get PRK, and go fly helicopters. But I didn't like what it takes to climb that ladder in that industry. And then also, by the time I would have made it to the airlines or flying private jets, I would have been 35 years old. That's a seniority based industry. So I was never going to reach the
Hmm.
levels of income that I thought I was going to reach. And every 6 months having to take a check ride, every 6 months having to go to Safety in Motion to retrain and stay certified. I was just like, this is not,
Sounds
I wanted to,
frustrating.
yeah, I just wanted to fly point A to point B. That's the
Yeah.
cool part. You know what I
So all I
mean?
wanted to do, just let me fly, just let me do my
So,
thing. Just leave me alone.
but now it's like, man, I wake up every day and it's like, particularly, being a chief AI officer for a technology company, I get to have these discovery calls and talk to these people who don't have the knowledge that I have, and just automatically identify, yeah, this can help you in this way.
Yeah.
I'm already building the system in my head while they're talking to me. I haven't put anything on paper,
Hmm.
and it just does something for me. It just, like, it makes
Yeah.
me feel good. It gets me excited. I'm like, well, you just sign the fucking contract so we can start the work, because I actually want to build this system for
Sure.
you. You know what I
Sure.
mean? So I love that you pointed that out. And so don't just get into it because there's money in it. But also don't be afraid of it, because you can learn it. You absolutely can learn
100%.
it. And I let that hold me back for so long.
I want to add to the you can learn it. I okay. I was never the social skills I have today. I had to learn the hard way. So 20 years ago, had you met me 20 years ago, the Andy that I am today is nothing like the Andy that I was back in the day. I was striking out with friendships, with relationships, with things at work. I just didn't understand life. I didn't know how to manage my life from that angle. I literally remember sitting in the barracks. I was 21, 22 years old. I was a late bloomer. I didn't have a girlfriend until a bit later in life, and I thought I was just gonna be single forever. Like, I just didn't have that social aspect of understanding how to talk to women, how to deal with life, how to deal with coworkers, right? And I was just like, man, this is my life, right? I'm just gonna sit here in the barracks and just watch TV and play on my computer and just be that, right? And it was kind of depressing. And then I had a couple of bad experiences with relationships when I moved to Vegas, and then I did the thing that I think most men do when they get beaten down when it comes to romantic, romantic interest. When it doesn't go your way, it's, man, fuck her, and she's a bitch, and she's a four-letter word, and fuck this and fuck that. And then I finally thought, wait, hold on a minute. I'm the one who's striking out over and over and over. Maybe it's me,
Yeah.
right? Maybe it's my fault that I'm not getting anywhere where I want to go. And then I had the mentor, the director that I talked about earlier. He threw me a DVD set. It was called David D'Angelo Double Your Dating, and he said, "Hey man, I'm getting married, or I am married. I'm not going to need this. Maybe you can make some use of it." And I thought, dude, I don't need some stupid dating seminar. Like, my game is fine. Like, this is embarrassing that you would even think that I would need to entertain the thought of this. And my ego pushed against it for quite a while. The DVD set was sitting on my desk for a couple of months. And I was bored one day, and I was like, fine, I got nothing else to do. Let me put one of these DVDs in. And sure, the title was Double Your Dating, and sure, it was focused on, getting further with women, and sharpening your your tools when it comes to talking to and dealing with, and all the whole things that go in and out of dating life. But it was more than that. It was understanding how to be social, having social skills, right? Understanding how to maneuver things in life. And it's not something that it teaches you directly, but indirectly. That was probably one of the things that was one of the biggest and best investments I've done, is get into that rabbit hole of, fine, I want to get laid. I want to understand. I want to do game. I just want to do better, right, in those aspects of my life, and doing better with women and learning game and understanding social skills bled over into all areas of my life. I was happier at life. I was doing better at work. My friendships were more solid. I was getting the dates that I wanted. Sure, not everything worked out perfectly. There was a lot of learning, a lot of stumbling over, making mistakes, and figuring things out. Nothing is ever. It's like going to the gym. You don't just get ripped by going to the gym once or twice or over a month. It's a progress. You have to keep going. You have to get incrementally better, and you stack those on top of each other. And had it not been for my mentor tossing that DVD set into my lap, and me reluctantly trying to finally watching it, had that not happened, I probably still would be kind of swimming in the sauce, trying to figure things out. So all I can say is to kind of bring this back to what you're saying. You can learn any skill. Social skill is a skill you can learn. That is one of those skills that if I can go back in time and tell my former self one thing, is do that. Learn social skills, and it's a completely learnable skill, and you'll never lose it. It's like riding a bike. Once you learn how to do it, everything in life will get better. So to your point too, if it's a mountain of it absolutely is, right. And if IT looks daunting to you, or if you want to do something but you just don't know how, everything is a learnable skill, everything. And you will not get results overnight, but you will learn incrementally, and you will get better over time. Absolutely.
And particularly this day and age, have a chat GPT window open, and have an N8N workspace, or a cursor workspace open, if that's what you're into.
Mm-hmm.
Ask it questions, and you'll shortcut that learning.
100%.
I taught myself automation in 30 days, maybe.
That's amazing.
Like just because, I don't know. I mean, it's going to take a little bit of discipline to sit there and force yourself to deal with error handling.
Without TikTok brains that can only handle 2 minutes at a time, right?
Right. But to your point, you really can learn anything. And I'm just a dumb infantry guy who is now, we got a bunch of clients for the AI company. I've built this brand that is helping more people than I'll ever know. I partnered with a plant medicine retreat. Like, none of this shit would have happened had I not, just got out of my own way and said, hey, I can figure out how to learn how to do this shit.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. And I think automation too, like I use automation at work, not to the point that you are, but for example, we do, we have a system to where from the HR system, we want to import a bunch of data into our on-prem directory. How do we do that? Cool. Let's write a script, automate it, right? Who gets to do it? I do, because I love doing that kind of stuff. If I can automate my processes, and if I can spend, instead of me clicking a button and clicking the button once for 5 minutes every day, well, if I can write a script that does it for me, sure, it may take me 2 hours to write the script, but once it works, again, you get that. If you ever watched House, like the show House,
I've watched that show all 8 seasons, like 4 times.
So it kind of falls off towards the end, right? But that's beside the point, right? But you will have those moments. I've had a few of those where I'm going to take the stereotypical house episode, right? Like Taub and 13 and Foreman are noodling on a problem, and at the the last 10 minutes of the episode, right? They're like, House, we can't figure it out. He's dying of something, and then House goes, check him for butt worms. Right? But House, we haven't had a case of butt worms in 20 years. He goes, check him for butt worms. Then the next scene, Foreman comes in, he's like, House, you had butt worms. How did you know? And he's doing the air guitar on his cane, right? Right, and the episode ends. You will have those moments, right, where you're like, it all comes together, and you make it better, and it feels great, and you're like, this is what I've done, right? This is my creation, and it's beautiful,
Dude, what a great way to end it. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Andy Dittrich. Please tell everybody how they can reach out to you if they want some guidance from you, want to get into the IT world, or just want
100%.
to talk to you because you're awesome.
Thank God you're making me blush. Stop it. To your point, I didn't even think about that aspect of it. If you want to get into IT, you want to get into whether you're 20 years old or 40 or hell even 15 or 50. If you want guidance on that, I am more than happy to sit down with you, give you the ins and outs of what works, what doesn't work. We can talk about if it's better to get certifications or schooling or experience. I'm more than happy to brain dump all the information I have to make sure that you succeed in IT. I love that. That gets me off, right? And in a very professional, appropriate way, right? I love that. So if you want to get some pointers on that, 100%. If you want to ping me, if you go to andysbook.com, one word, andysbook.com, there is a picture of me holding my book up. There's a link to the Amazon page. There's a link to some previous podcasts I've done. You're not the only one, Adam, I've talked to. Just want to, full disclosure. I'm sure I'm not your only guest either. You'll interviewing whore, right?
Yeah.
And there's a contact button on there too. It goes straight to my email. If you want to get a hold of me, if you want to come to Vegas and have a beer, I'm more than happy to pay for the first round. So it's all on there. Again, andysbook.com. That's the last plug I have for you.
Dude, thank you so much for being here today. Thanks for this incredible conversation. Really
Adam,
appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, Andy Dittrich, and we'll see you guys next week with another hopefully awesome episode. Please don't forget to like, rate, review, subscribe, download. Just help this reach the people that it needs to reach. Help our brothers and sisters not make the same fucking mistakes that I made and so many before and after me are continually making, because tap is not the answer. We'll see you guys next week. That's our show, and I'm truly thankful you've joined us at The Strategic Veteran. If our conversation today sparked curiosity, or if you're ready to elevate your game, I'm here to help. Visit thestrategicveteran.com for exclusive show notes and resources, or to book a coaching session directly with me. Take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and share your review. Your support makes all the difference. For more insights and daily strategies, let's connect on LinkedIn and keep the conversation going. Remember, this isn't just a podcast, it's your strategic advantage in action. Until our next rendezvous, stay bold and continue the mission.